Hello, everybody. This is Mike from Nymphs, Knots, and Nonsense, and today we are tying the Bob Hopper. The Bob Hopper is a simple foam grasshopper pattern that works really well. So he looks like that. It looks like that. Really, really simple. One piece of magic that makes it work is the cutter for the foam. That makes foam in a particular feather shape. So the feather shape looks like this. Poke some holes in it. These things are designed to be cranked out incredibly fast and easy. If you get good at doing these, you can crank one out in 2 or 3 minutes. Easy fly, not a lot of materials, nice guide fly, and it's effective. It looks like a grasshopper. The materials for this fly are as follows. You need some 2 millimeter craft foam. You can get it in tan, you can get it in green, you can try pink, purple. There's some really crazy colors for hoppers that are out there. You need a cutter. In fact, this is our cutter here, and it makes shapes like this. I'll show you how to use these in just a second, but you need this specific cutter. You need a hook. I'm using a C200BL for this. It is actually a nymph hook. And the reason why is I heard somebody say that if you use a nymph hook, it's a little bit heavier wire. And so it acts like a keel to keep that grasshopper upright when it lands on the water. Made sense to me. So I'm using them. The cutters themselves come in two different sizes. They come in a size 10 and a size 12. Today I am using a size 12, so that's the size hook that I have. You need some dubbing for the body. Today I'm using Antron dubbing in light olive brown. Other colors, maybe a tan, a little bit more. This is officially March brown. That works. Or I have my um, seal brown, which is a little bit a darker brown. Feel free to experiment. What I do try to do is in this fly, you'll see the dubbing right here. I try to find a dubbing color that contrasts a little bit, or at least adds some variety to the color of the foam. Okay, so something a little bit different. Otherwise, you end up with a fly that's just tan, tan, tan. I don't think the fish care though. Like most flies, you will need some thread. Here I have ultra thread in 70 denier in rusty brown. Again, I'm trying to go for that contrast. You need a material for the wing. Here I have a piece of cow elk hair. I've been working on this piece for a little while. I just like natural materials where I can. Obviously, the fly has foam, so I sort of violate that principle. But you can use elk hair, you can use deer hair, you could use a synthetic fiber like a Congo hair from Fly Tyers Dungeon. You could use a bait fish hair. Kind of getting in that sort of tan gray, sort of off-white color to match whatever you think a grasshopper wings look like. You need rubber legs. I use these ones. These are from Hairline. These are Chiconi's barred silly legs. What I like about these is the barring, so that adds the illusion of movement, and the fact that they're semi-transparent so that they let some light through, which also adds to the effect of action. And each strand is the right size, so that seems to work pretty well for me. The last material that I use is this thing. This is orange, fluorescent orange Antron yarn to make that little cider that's right here behind the head of the fly. And the not a material category, I use Dave's Flex Cement because it's a rubber cement. So it spreads and it sticks to that foam. And I like that. Some people use crazy glue because it does the same thing. It bonds that. But glue becomes incredibly important to this fly because this part right here on the head of the fly is bent over. And while yes, you tie it in order to keep that material from twisting on the hook shank. So in order to keep it from twisting left to right, you need glue to hold it together to make it a more stable platform. And so I'm using Dave's Fleximate. In order to cut out the shapes for the bob hopper, and I've got a little collection here of them, you'll need some foam, and I use 2mm foam, so it's 2mm thick, in sort of this medium to tan brown. You need a cutter. This cutter came from River Road Creations in Stevensville, Montana. My ancestors used to live there, and you'll see it just has this feather shape with a little connector thing. And you need a pad, and this pad you can get from River Road Creations. They give them for free with some of their cutters, which is a good thing. But it's just a thick rubber pad. And all you have to do is you lay down your foam. The way that I do it is I take this little narrow spot here and connect that to the edge so that I don't have to cut out the foam. I place it right next to the edge where I've already created, and I will wiggle back and forth until I feel that I've cut through that foam, and then just pull it out. Okay? In this case, I got a little bit of a trailer, and separate the rest and clean it out, and you have a little piece of foam. So let me do it again, because usually I do, 10 of these at a time. Occasionally, you run into a spot where it doesn't separate cleanly. So what you want to do is just take your scissors and cut off the little edge where it's still connected. You should see the outline that the cutter leaves. If you get stuck in your cutter like this, you can just use a bodkin. That was not a bodkin, that was my Barbie comb. You can use a bodkin, stick it right here in this little gap, and then just pop the foam out. Now that you have the foam cut, you want to add 2 holes to the foam. The first one is going to be, you have this feather shape, sort of the oval rounded shape, and it comes up here, and then there's a fatter section, and then a narrow spot, and then another fatter section. So you want 1 hole right here where this first narrow section is, coming from the back of the foam cut. Okay, and you just want to poke a bodkin through there. Looks like that. Okay, and wiggle it a little, because you want that hole to be big. And then I flip it over and poke it from the other side. Be careful not to poke your fingers. Wiggle that a little bit. Then the second hole that you want to do is for this middle fat section. You want to find the middle of that, and then halfway to that narrow spot, like that. Okay, and this is where the eye of the hook goes. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. Poke it through and wiggle it at one end, poke it through, wiggle it at the other end. Okay, and so what happens? This is where the foam will stick out above the body. So you stick the eye of the hook through here and push this back, and then tie it on right here over this little hole. And then this part is where, as you bend the foam back over itself, like that, this hole right here is where the eye of the hook sticks out. Okay? And so it's a little bit of a process to get the right spacing, and put it in the right spot. Before we zoom in on the fly, I want to show you 2 things that I do to prepare. They don't work very well in macro mode. The first one is we want to take some of this cow elk hair, and we're going to grab materials for a wing. So I use cow elk because I grew up with a lot of elk available. You can use synthetics if you want, but I just want to prepare this. Take a chunk of elk hair about that big, and I'm going to take I call this the Barbie comb, but it's the underhair removal comb, and I'm just going to pass it through a couple times, and you'll see it grabs all of this material from that clump of hair. Just set that off to the side. I'm not going to use that at all. And then I take this hair and I pass it tip first into my hair stacker. Okay. And then, whoops, I got a couple that escaped. Not a big deal. Push those off to the side. and I'm going to bounce it up and down a little bit on the table. And what that does, if you see from the side here, is it evens out all those tips and makes them equal in length. So now I can just, with this hair stacker, I can just tip this tube up out of the way and extract my hair that way. So I'm going to take that and set that off to the side. When I need it, it is ready. The other thing that I'm going to do is take my legs, and these barred legs come on just the way they cut them, they stretch it out, and then they have a cutter that comes through and cuts individual strands. But each individual strand is perfect for 2 hoppers. So we're going to go in and cut off a strand here, hold this out, cut off the other end of the strand. Then we're going to double this over. So just even up the ends here and then give it a cut where it comes together like that. And then we're going to take these 2 ends, pair them up. Hey, that's close. Pair them up and give them a cut. And there's a little bit extra in there, so it doesn't have to be too precise. You just have to come close enough to cutting this one single strand into 4 even strands that look like that. Now to tie this fly, we start with our hook in the vise. Pretty common. Let's start our thread, cut off the tag end of the thread, and take that thread all the way back to the bend of the hook. Okay. And we're going to add some color. I do this dark olive, light olive brown. So that's what I use for dubbing. You can use really any color. I've seen people do it with purple, with pink. It doesn't matter. But one thing that I do want to do is give it a contrast from that tan that I use for foam. And you can change the colors of the foam too, right? Feel free to experiment, try to match the hatch, or go crazy with purples and pinks. And I'm just going to make a dubbing noodle onto my thread. I'm pushing that up, and I am going to wrap that. Now you notice it gets a little bit loose, so I give it a twist here with my finger, and then hold it tight and twist it. A little bit of a technique to save your dubbing adventure sometimes. And you want to go about 2/3 of the way up the hook. If you have one of your foam cutouts already, you can take it and line up the hole there with the eye of the hook. This is hard to do when I'm looking at a mirror image on the screen. And you see how far back that other hole goes? So this hole right here, that you at least want dubbing up to that area. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is take this, put the eye through that hole, and pull it back to where that eye now lines up with you see it like this sideways, where that hole that I put lines up with the eye of the hook. And then we are in a good position to be able to tie this in. I'm going to take my fingers and make a little V, push down on the foam so that it curls around the shank of the hook, and we are going to wrap 3 loose over the top. Take this hole that's here, poke the eye of the hook through it just briefly, and that will make things a little bit more stable. It won't twist as much. It'll still try to twist on you, especially this part that's in front will try to twist like this as I wrap it, but it'll hold it, and you just do 5 or 6 wraps. Then we're going to pull this out. We're going to go 1 wrap up, pull the foam back, and do 4 wraps in front, then down, the back side. Okay. Then poke that eye through again. Give it 1, 2, 3, 4 wraps. Then do the same thing. Pull up, pop the foam out, hold it back, wrap 1, 2, 3, 4, up, and then down on the far side, and poke our eye of the hook through that hole up front. And now let's give it 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Cool. And now we are anchored off. What happens is when we go back to the bare hook here and wrap on that and then come back, it anchors this sort of knot or multiple wraps that are developing here. It anchors that to the hook and it makes it so that the body of the fly doesn't rotate as much. Okay? So that gives me a little bit of extra stability. I think it's at least worthwhile to do. Now we want to, so I'll show you what it looks like from the top. Okay, and then from the bottom. Now what I want to do is take this part that's up front and I want to curl that up and V it. Okay, and then we're going to do one big wrap and we're going to angle ourselves up to where we wrap right behind where the eye of the hook is. And we're going to give it a wrap there. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And so what that looks like from the, ooh, that one went around really ugly. Hang on, let me see if I can do that. Okay. I want a little bit more here. 2, 4, 5. Okay. That looks a little bit cleaner there. That wrap where I went forward was a little bit too far back, so it didn't look as clean. Okay. And so we're wrapping it to hold it. Now what that does is we're going to take this part here and fold it back. And so when we wrap here right behind the eye, it gives us a crease right here. Okay? And there's a matching crease over on the other side, but it gives us a crease right here where the legs of the hopper can stick out. If we don't do that little tie, then it leaves a big, nice rounded chunk of foam here, and that bends the hopper legs so that they stick straight out. It doesn't look nice. So I add that little bit there. And then to get us back to where we need to go, we're going to come up the near side and do the big crossover again and get back to where we tied stuff in. Okay, and so that gets us to that. The next thing that I want to do is to throw in a half hitch here. Really easy, little half hitch, because we're tying in the wings here. I go back to my hair stacker, and I'm going to bend this tube up. That exposes all of my hair. And I am going to grab the ends of that hair. And I'm going to place them. And they go, I've heard different versions. Some people say they should be a little bit less. Some people say a little bit longer. I'm in the little bit longer camp. I'm just going to hold that there and give it a light wrap, 2, 3 light wraps, then give it a tug. You'll see it flares. The hair starts to flare a little bit. That's okay. Go 4, 5, 6. Now I can really add a tighter 6th one. And I'm going to take my left hand, grab all these hairs that flare. Maybe. Bend them forward. Because I need my other hand here. Okay, fine. I'll do it this way. Bend all those forward. Take my scissors. And I am going to cut that all off. And we're just going to go find these extra strands that didn't behave. On this one, I've got maybe a little bit extra hair, so they don't behave as much. I've got a couple extra strands. Not a big deal. Cut them out of there. I've got my nice little midge tip scissors that work really well. And I'm just going to give these stubble ends a little bit of a haircut because I'm going to fold that foam over the top and I want a smaller amount of bulk. But do be careful that you don't cut your tying thread. Okay, so that's what I want it to look like. Something like that. Okay. And I got this nice hair tail. Now what I'm going to do is take some of my flex cement and take a bodkin, and I'm going to add a big drop right there. A couple more. There we go. That's a little bit more of a big drop. Okay, put a big drop right there because when we fold this foam over, we want it to stay and not rotate around the shank, and so that glue helps us to do that. Some people say to use crazy glue. I just use flex cement. Seems to not be a problem to me, but I'm kind of a freak of nature, and that's okay. All right, now I'm just going to take this little tab that's here, bend that back, give it a wrap. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Take that little tab that was left there and cut that guy off. Cool. Now I have 3 more steps. Next step is I'm going to rotate it so we're like this. Hold one of my rubber legs here. Most of the rubber leg sticks out to the back. And I'm just going to give it a little bit of a wrap. And I want it to be inside. Here, let me wrap it and then I'll show you. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I want that to be right there inside of that crack in the front and then underneath that piece of the foam that comes over the top. Okay. And then I'm going to rotate this around, do the exact same thing in the back. And give it a little bit of a wrap. Okay. Then another and another and another. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Here's what it looks like from the top. Looking all right. And give it a little bit of a half hitch there. Just flip that up. And pull it tight. Next thing is my orange Antron. This is just a cider so that you can see the fly a little bit better. And I'm just going to, I work with a long chunk of it and then I just use an end, wrap that in and then cut it so I can have this big length of it that gradually gets shorter over time. Add that in. For the top of it and give it some half hitches in there. You could whip finish at this point. That would totally be okay. Okay, once I've got that tied down, I just want to go in and cut my yarn. And you can make this longer and then just cut both sides of it at the same time. It's not a big deal. You just want to add that little flash of color. And now I'm going to cut off my thread. I rotate this thing around so that it's upside down. And I will add some glue to the thread wraps that come around the bottom. So I'm going to do my usual thing, get a dot here on my bodkin, add that, and then just pull my bodkin, add a little bit more, and I am good. The final step, and the one that I always forget, is using a Sharpie to add little grasshopper eyes to this fly. This is incredibly hard to do when you are we're doing it from the side. So normally I flip it around so it's facing me, and then I can boom, 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 but I'm at the table, so it's hard to do. So you add the two eyes, and they look like that. And that gives us the final fly. So let's take a look at it from the top, from the side, from the bottom. Just give it a full rotation. As always, I've been Mike. Thank you for watching. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, and I will see you in the next video.